But I have to just say, anyone who has doubted me over the past decade about this evil woman now needs to eat some humble pie.
The reason why these pictures are so problematic for Meghan Markle is because these pictures place her with Jeffrey Epstein.
Meghan is at the bottom of the barrel.
In fact, I've seen the tapes. I've got them somewhere. God knows where now. I've got them on some.
So you've seen Nudie Rudy Meghan too?
I've seen more than one thing.
She's a con artist.
It was really important to me. I remember where I come from.
It's going to be explosive.
I tried so hard.
Let me take you through what Tom Bower has revealed. He's told the Daily Mirror, I've got a lot of new material already, and I think the whole world wants new insights. It's an amazing story.
What kept nagging after that breakdown was something much bigger. The Sussexes have been criticized in print by Piers Morgan, Samantha Markle, Valentine Lowe, and Thomas Markle Sr., and they ignored all of it. Tom Bower published Revenge in 2022 and accused Meghan of social climbing, manipulation, and calculated image control. Again, there was no response. They let it sit there. They let it pass. That silence in itself would not have stood out if it had remained consistent, but it did not.
I can't wait to read this. There are many, many unanswered questions when it comes to Meghan Markle.
Then came Omid Scobie's Endgame, which accidentally leaked the names of 2 senior royals accused of racism. Even then, they stayed silent. But betrayal was different. 12 days before a single copy had even shipped, their spokesperson released what was described as the most aggressive public statement in Sussex history. It was dismissed as deranged conspiracy and melodrama. At first, it seemed reasonable to assume the panic was about the brainwashing claim or the Cenobolic collapse or the Invictus footage. That would have been an easy conclusion to reach. It would also have been the wrong one.
For so long, there have been rumours that many of us believe are true. And I think someone like Tom Bower can get these across the line and get them in print and prove that they are true.
Once the serialized excerpts in the Times were read from front to back, something strange became impossible to ignore. The material that actually appeared to frighten them was not in the book, at least not yet. The serialization covered Harry's isolation, Camilla's warning, and the charity implosion. But it did not touch the one subject that could make Bower's mainstream credibility genuinely dangerous to Meghan. That was the real issue hanging over everything. 4 days after those excerpts appeared on newsstands, someone at The Spectator decided to say out loud what had long remained carefully unspoken.
The Yacht girl. Oh my God. Ghislaine Maxwell spoke. She said so. Virginia Roberts spoke. They both talked about Meghan Markle, but the world chose to ignore it. And even now, with these pictures out in the public domain, the press still refuses to expose Meghan Markle.
Julie Burchill is not known as a careful writer. She was fired from the Daily Telegraph in 2021 for a racist tweet about Baby Lyatt's name. She later paid damages to journalist Ash Sarkar after an Islamophobic attack. By most professional standards, she is radioactive. Yet she also writes for The Spectator, founded in 1828 and one of the oldest continuously published magazines in the English language. On March 17, 2026, Burchill published a column titled "Spare Us the Girls' Weekend, Meghan," mocking Meghan's upcoming luxury women's retreat in Sydney, where tickets were priced at nearly 3,000 Australian dollars. The piece was crude and personal, exactly what would be expected from Burchill. Then, buried in the middle of all that ridicule, came a line that changed the atmosphere. She wrote that no one would get to ask anything interesting, such as how many yachts Meghan had been a guest on before she met her prince, and whether the number was in double figures or triple. That one line was impossible to overlook.
Something is going on. And Meghan and all the things that she has done to, pull other people down and to question them and their behavior. Well, let's continue to turn the tables and talk about you, Miss Meghan Markle, and what you have done.
A columnist writing in a publication that has existed since before the Crimean War had just printed a direct reference to the yacht allegations. Not on YouTube, not in a Reddit thread, not in a TikTok stitch. In The Spectator with editors, with lawyers, and after review. That distinction matters because for 7 years these questions had lived only in independent media, anonymous accounts, and conspiracy forums. Mainstream British outlets had treated the whole subject as if it did not exist, Suddenly, that silence was broken.
The key line there, and the line that really, really interested me, was not a question about whether she was a yacht girl, but just simply stating as a fact and then asking, was it double figures or triple in terms of how many yachts she was a guest on before she met Prince Harry?
Burchell's column did not prove anything about Meghan's past. What it did prove was something else. It proved that the media's willingness to keep ignoring the subject had ended. As of March 17th, that old agreement of silence was gone.
The Meghan Markle yacht girl claims simply will not go away. And you know I've spoken about this before, but until now, no one in the mainstream media has been brave enough to go there. Well, that has just changed.
Tom Bower is forensic in his investigations, and he does them over a period of time. This is not like a Daily Mail hatchet job or anything like that. He has a very solid track record.
A line has to be drawn here, and it has to be a thick one, because this story has been polluted by fabrication, misidentified photographs, and conspiracy content so reckless that entire YouTube channels were removed in January's purge. Some of what circulates online about Meghan's pre-Harry years is verified. Some of it is attributed to named sources. Some of it is completely invented. Only the first two categories matter here. The analysis belongs to the speaker, but the facts being discussed are on the public record. One part of that record begins with Soho House. Marcus Anderson, the global membership director at Soho House, is central to that network. Canadian-born, he started as a waiter and climbed until he became the right hand of founder Nick Jones. Anderson met Meghan during her Suits years in Toronto. He attended her royal wedding in 2018. He attended her baby shower in New York in 2019. Royal correspondent Katie Nischal reported on Channel 4 that Harry asked Anderson to set up not a date, but an opportunity for the two of them to meet in a private room at Soho House. He was there all the time, always near the center of things, always around the key moments. That constant presence is exactly why people keep returning to his role and asking what it really meant. Anderson was not the original matchmaker. Harry's own memoir confirms that Violet von Westenhals first connected them through Instagram in July 2016. But Anderson handled the logistics, the early meetings, and the introductions. He was the infrastructure around the relationship. Tom Bower wrote in Revenge, published in 2022, that Meghan attended Brett Ratner's parties in Hollywood several times a week for years. People around the Suits cast did not understand how she could afford to fly business class all over the world so often. Her childhood friend Nanaki Pretty told Bower that Meghan was a conniving social climber who had her sights set on snagging a prince ever since high school. That is not being presented as a new interpretation. It is a direct quote from someone who knew her before any of this began. The suggestion is that these questions cannot simply be brushed aside because there are pieces missing. And many believe a great deal of the record was scrubbed from the internet long before Meghan Markle became widely known. This is where the subject becomes more uncomfortable. The man who owned roughly 60% of Soho House at the time was Ron Burkle, the American billionaire founder of Yucaipa Companies. Burkle's name appears in Jeffrey Epstein's address book. His name also appears on Epstein's private jet flight logs. When the United States Department of Justice unsealed the second batch of Epstein court documents in January 2024, Burkle's name surfaced again, not in a criminal capacity, but deeply enough inside the paperwork to attract headlines. No one has produced evidence of any direct relationship between Burkle and Meghan. No credible reporting has ever established such a claim. But Nick Jones, the original founder of Soho House, was present at Meghan and Harry's wedding as a guest of honor. And the man who helped build the social infrastructure that brought Meghan into Harry's world was operating inside a financial and social network that touched Epstein's orbit. That proximity is now the thread people like Burchell are pulling in print. Burkle's name matters because it keeps resurfacing in the background. Then another image entered the discussion. A photograph spread rapidly across social media in February 2026, just days after Andrew's arrest. It showed 7 women on a boat under Mediterranean sunlight, smiling for Instagram. 2 red arrows had been drawn on top of the picture, one pointing to Meghan Markle and the other to a woman labeled Karina Shuliak, Jeffrey Epstein's last known girlfriend, who dated him from 2009 until his death. The caption from RT, Russian state television, claimed that Epstein's 10-year girlfriend was pictured with Markle. The post exploded. It gathered hundreds of thousands of views and spread across Facebook, Reddit, Threads, and X. Millions of people saw it, Then Snopes investigated. The photo itself was real. Meghan was in it. There were no signs of manipulation, but the woman identified as Karina Shuliak was not Shuliak at all. She was Flavia Cerniani, an Italian lifestyle blogger who runs a page called The Chic Picnic. The original Instagram post, uploaded on August 10, 2016 by photographer Carlotta Duca, had tagged Cerniani by name. Shuliak was never on that boat. That part of the story collapsed under scrutiny, and rightly so, but the debunk did not erase the verified parts, it sharpened them. Meghan was on a yacht. The trip took place in the Mediterranean off the coast of Formentera in the Balearic Islands of Spain. It happened in August 2016, only weeks before she began dating Harry. The women in the photograph included Misha Nanu, Heather Dorak, and Benita Litt, all confirmed through their own social media tags. Nanu, of course, designed the shirt Meghan wore for her first public appearance with Harry and sat at the center of those early introductions. That network was real. The timing was real. The people were real. The false Shuliak identification fell apart, but the verified elements of the trip did not. They remained exactly where they were, unanswered and unchanged. That is what makes this issue difficult to dismiss. The fabricated part of the story failed. Good, that is how scrutiny is supposed to work. But the yacht, the network, the timing, and the overlapping circles stayed in place. Those are the pieces that continue to sit there, still unchallenged, still hanging in the air, and still leading back toward questions mainstream outlets had avoided for years. Questions kept building from there. What was she doing on the yacht? Why did David Boies want to question her? Why was she moving in the same kind of social circles that overlapped with Andrew's world? Why did people in Meghan's social orbit appear connected to the same broader network? Those questions did not disappear when the false Karina identification was exposed. If anything, they became sharper because what remained after the debunk was not fantasy but a real trip, a real photograph, a real set of people, and a real timeline. That is where Ron Burkle's name comes back into the frame. In December 2021, something happened that mainstream media covered for one news cycle and then buried. David Boies, chairman of Boies Schiller Flexner, one of the most powerful litigation firms in America, gave an interview to the Daily Beast. He was representing Virginia Giuffre in her civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew. During that interview, he told journalist Tom Sykes that his legal team was considering deposing Meghan Markle, not as a defendant, but as a witness. The reasoning he gave was direct. She was in the United States, which meant they had jurisdiction over her. She was also somebody who had obviously, at least for a period of time, been a close associate of Prince Andrew, and was therefore in a position perhaps to have seen what he did. Or, if not to have seen it, to have heard people talk about it. Then came the line that stood out most of all. He said she was somebody they could count on to tell the truth. That was not an offhand remark. Boies said his team had only 10 to 12 depositions in total. He was not going to waste one on a random celebrity with no relevance. The fact that he was considering Meghan meant he believed she had proximity and knowledge that could matter to Andrew's conduct. He explicitly said he would not consider deposing Queen Elizabeth because of her age and out of respect and deference. Meghan was granted no such exemption. That sequence matters. A senior lawyer, one who had taken on the United States government, Hollywood studios, and Fortune 500 companies, publicly stated that the Duchess of Sussex qualified as a possible witness in an Epstein-adjacent sexual assault case. Not because of online gossip, not because of internet rumor, because of documented proximity to Andrew and to the elite social circles around him. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is due diligence from a senior attorney stated openly in a major publication. Another piece of the timeline adds to the discomfort. In 2006, Rachel Meghan Markle was at a Hamptons party attended by Harvey Weinstein. At the time, nobody paid attention to her presence because she was not yet famous. The significance is not that this proves anything on its own. It is that when placed beside everything else, it contributes to a broader map of connections, appearances, and overlapping circles that people keep returning to. Then the legal timeline moved quickly. On January 12, 2022, Judge Lewis Kaplan denied Andrew's motion to dismiss. The case was heading into discovery. Depositions were getting close. 5 weeks later, on February 15, 2022, Andrew settled, reportedly for £12 million. The case never reached the stage where Meghan would have been called. Virginia later took her own life in April 2025 at her farm near Gingin, Western Australia. She was 41. Her family said the toll of abuse had become unbearable. Her posthumous memoir, Nobody's Girl, was published 6 months later. Around the same time, attention kept returning to Jessica Reed Krause and her House in Habit investigation into Meghan Markle's Yacht Girl past, a project she had reportedly been working on for 6 years and had promised to release. But David Boies was not operating in a vacuum. He knew about the Soho House network. He knew about Burkle's documented connections to Epstein. He knew about the social infrastructure that linked Meghan's world to Andrew's world through overlapping elite circles. He said what he said publicly, in print, in the Daily Beast. Meghan, for her part, has never publicly addressed those statements. Not once. Privacy laws were strong, and that protection was used aggressively at the time. There were many things about her personal life that never received direct answers. Tom Bower himself had said that he would work some of them into another book. This is the pattern that keeps drawing attention, not merely the allegations themselves, but the silence around them. The Sussexes know perfectly well how to deny things when they choose to. When Tom Bower published Revenge, they remained publicly quiet, but allies pushed back through sympathetic outlets. When Omid Scobie's Endgame leaked the names of royals accused of racism, the response came in the form of careful non-responses. They have lawyers, they have a PR team. They know exactly how to issue a precise and targeted denial when they want one. They called Bower's betrayal a deranged conspiracy. They accused him of constructing ever more elaborate theories about people he did not know and had never met. Their world, it is said, only speaks to people who repeat their own narrative, people they can manage and control. The idea that the truth could be extracted from them directly is treated as a contradiction in terms. PR expert Renee Smith, founder of the Atticism Agency, told The Express that the response made them look deeply bothered and suggested Bower had hit a nerve. But what stands out is what the statement did not do. It attacked the author. It attacked the method. It attacked the motive. It never specifically denied the yacht allegations. It did not mention yachts at all. It did not mention Soho House. It did not mention Burkle. It did not mention Boies. It did not mention the pre-Harry social network in any direct form. Across every major public Sussex statement released since 2020, there is still no clear, direct denial of the yacht past claims. Not from Meghan, not from Harry, not from Sunshine Sachs. Not from Schillings, not from any spokesperson in any outlet at any time. They have denied the brainwashing characterization. They have denied bullying staff. They have denied fabricating parts of the Oprah interview. But the yacht questions, the same specific questions Burchell printed in The Spectator, the same ones Boies raised in the Daily Beast, and the same ones independent researchers have been documenting for 8 years, have received nothing. No comment, no denial, no legal threat, only silence. When a book is attacked, when the messenger is attacked, but the one claim the audience most wants answered is never directly denied, that stops looking like strategy and starts looking like a tell. The story widened further with the name Kevin Blatt, a celebrity tape broker, who described a call in 2018 from a woman claiming to possess a 4-year-old tape of a Meghan who was about to marry a prince in England. The claim itself sat in that same murky territory that has long surrounded the subject, a mixture of rumor, allegation, and explosive suggestion. But by that point, the atmosphere had already changed. On February 19th, Andrew was arrested. 3 weeks earlier, the Department of Justice had released more than 3 million pages of Epstein files. Within 72 hours of that arrest, the yacht past allegations migrated from independent media into mainstream platforms. Burchell printed the question in The Spectator on March 17th. Dan Wooten broadcast fresh claims on his Substack show the next day to an audience in the hundreds of thousands. Bower's betrayal gave the entire topic a form of mainstream legitimacy, even though the book itself focused mainly on the post-Megxit years. That is why the Sussex response was so aggressive. Not because of the brainwashing claim, not because of the sensible disaster. Because a book serialized in the Times of London, published by Blink Publishing, and reviewed in every major British outlet had shifted the Overton window. It made Meghan's past fair game for publications that had refused to touch it before. Even Newsweek's chief royal correspondent Jack Royston warned of the Streisand effect, arguing that by attacking the book so publicly, the Sussexes had only guaranteed that more people would read it. By March 15th, Betrayal had reached #1 on Amazon before a single copy had shipped. Once that door opens in mainstream British media, it does not close easily. It opens with legal teams, editorial review, and institutional backing behind it. Everything in this discussion rests on the same public reporting available to everyone else. The verified facts, the named sources, the court filings, they are all on the record. Nobody speaking about them was in those private rooms. But when a Spectator columnist prints the question, when a senior litigator publicly names Meghan as a potential witness in an Epstein-related case. When the woman who ran the brand audit tells Harry that his wife is commercially toxic, and when the response to all of it is to attack every messenger without ever denying the message. The silence itself starts changing shape. It stops looking tactical, it becomes the story. At some point, silence stops functioning as strategy and starts becoming the story itself. The yacht questions are only one part of what is now coming apart, because there are 6 specific people, spread across 8 years and 3 continents, who tried to put this story on the record. None of them knew each other, all of them paid a price. The pattern linking what happened to each one does not look random, it looks like a system. That is the larger point running beneath everything else. This is not just about isolated claims, scattered headlines, or internet speculation that drifts in and out of public attention. It is about the repeated appearance of the same dynamic. Certain people speak, questions surface, details reach the public, and then consequences follow. The individual names may differ, the timing may differ, the setting may change from one country to another, but the structure remains recognizably the same. That is why the focus is no longer only on the allegations themselves. It is on the machinery around them, the reactions, the denials that never quite deny, the pressure points, and the pattern of who gets hit when they get too close to the wrong subject. By now, the public record contains enough verified fragments, named sources, court-connected remarks, and repeated overlaps to make the silence itself impossible to ignore. When people wanted to dismiss the subject in the past, they could point to the noise surrounding it. They could say the story had been contaminated by conspiracies, by bad actors, by misidentified images, by reckless online commentary that destroyed its own credibility. That excuse has become much harder to use now that parts of the same subject have crossed into mainstream print, into serious legal discussion, and into institutional media space with editors, lawyers, and reputational risk attached. That is what changed when The Spectator printed the yacht question. That is what changed when David Boies publicly identified Meghan as someone he considered deposing as a witness in Virginia Giuffer's civil case against Prince Andrew. That is what changed when Tom Bower's work moved the subject closer to mainstream legitimacy, even if the book itself focused more heavily on the post-Megxit years. The issue is no longer confined to fringe corners where it can be dismissed on sight. It has entered rooms where things are reviewed, checked, and weighed before they go out. Once that happens, the burden shifts. The question is no longer why anonymous people online keep talking. The question becomes why the people at the center of it still refuse to address the most specific and persistent points directly. That refusal is what keeps standing out. There has been no shortage of response when other issues have surfaced. They have denied the brainwashing language. They have denied staff bullying. They have pushed back against claims tied to opera, against narratives they felt damaged their image, against authors and commentators whose framing they disliked. They know how to mobilize public relations. They know how to use legal language. They know how to shape a response with precision when they decide a response is necessary. Yet when it comes to the yacht questions, the Soho House network, the Burkle connection, and the broader pre-Harry social world now being discussed more openly, there is still no direct denial. Not a narrow denial, not a broad one, not a clean statement that closes the matter, just silence. That is why the silence itself now carries weight. When an accusation is false and the person accused has the means, the lawyers, the publicists, the media access, and the willingness to fight, people expect to see a clear rebuttal at least once. Instead, what appears over and over is a different strategy. Attack the author, attack the motive, attack the tone, attack the credibility of the messenger. But never go straight at the core point in plain language. That may work for a while when the subject still feels radioactive or marginal. It becomes much harder to sustain once mainstream outlets begin signaling that the subject is no longer untouchable. That shift also explains why the reaction to betrayal was so aggressive. It was not simply that the book made unpleasant claims. Other books had done that before. Other writers had criticized Meghan and Harry before. Other public figures had gone after them in print, on television, and in interviews, and those attacks had often been ignored. What made this different was the fear that Bower's credibility, his mainstream reach, and the institutional weight behind the serialization had widened the boundaries of what respectable publications were now prepared to discuss. The danger was not only what he had already printed. The danger was what the publication of that book made newly discussable. That is why the Overton window matters here. Once a topic enters respectable circulation, it does not return easily to the shadows. It becomes available for follow-up, For columnists, for researchers, for editors willing to revisit what they once refused to touch. It gains backing not because every claim has been proven, but because the subject itself is no longer banned by association. That appears to be the stage this story has now reached. The old wall separating independent speculation from mainstream discussion has cracked. Even people who still reject the claims outright have to contend with the fact that serious institutions are no longer pretending the subject does not exist. At the same time, the damage is not only reputational. The transcript argues that the Sussexes' wider position is deteriorating on several fronts at once. Their global profile remains, but the past 4 or 5 years have changed the way they are seen. Reputation, status, and fortune are described as crumbling together. Commercial value has been questioned, professional relationships have cooled, projects have failed to deliver at the level expected. People who were once natural ideological allies are no longer fully protective. Even the wokest of the woke, as it is put here, have started turning on Harry and Meghan. That matters because it suggests the collapse is no longer being driven solely by hostile critics or traditional opponents. It is spreading into spaces that once gave them cover. Jack Royston's warning about the Streisand effect fits into that same picture. By attacking the book so publicly, the Sussexes ensured that more people would read it. By trying to bury or discredit it in dramatic terms, they gave it energy. The book hit #1 on Amazon before a single copy had even shipped. That is what happens when a public figure responds with visible alarm to a work they might otherwise have let pass more quietly. Attention increases, curiosity increases. More people decide there must be something in it worth seeing. That is precisely the outcome their reaction seems to have helped produce. Everything circles back to the same unresolved tension. The verified facts are on the record. Named sources have spoken. Court-adjacent comments exist in print. Social links, photographs, timelines, and documented overlaps are all there to be examined. None of that automatically proves every allegation floating around the subject, and the transcript is careful to separate verified material from fabrications. But the continued refusal to answer the most pointed questions directly creates its own meaning. It leaves a vacuum, and that vacuum keeps filling with suspicion. That is why the ending lands where it does. The yacht questions are not being presented as the whole story. They are one part of a much larger unraveling. 6 specific people across 8 years and 3 continents tried to place parts of this story on the record. They were not connected to one another. They did not operate as a team. Yet all of them faced consequences. When a pattern repeats across that many years, in that many places, involving that many separate voices, it becomes harder to call it coincidence. The pattern starts looking organized. It starts looking like a system designed not necessarily to disprove, but to suppress, isolate, discredit, or outlast. That is where this section leaves the story, not at a conclusion, but at the edge of the next layer. The silence has become part of the evidence. The reaction has become as revealing as the allegation. The issue is no longer only what happened in the past, but how that past has been managed, who was allowed to speak about it, who paid for doing so, and why the same subjects still trigger attacks on the messenger without ever producing a direct answer to the message. That next breakdown, focused on the 6 people who tried to get this on the record and the pattern connecting what happened to each of them, is presented as the part that comes next.